Just imagine this for a moment, astronauts calmly floating inside the International Space Station, going about their daily experiments, adjusting controls, sending back data to Earth, when suddenly, out of nowhere, something vast and unfamiliar begins to drift into their view. Something so enormous, so utterly alien, that even the hardened professionals inside the ISS freeze for a few seconds in pure disbelief. Because crossing so close to Earth's orbit, where nothing unexpected is supposed to appear without prior detection, was now a huge unknown object, moving silently, slowly, deliberately, like a shadow against the blackness of space. And the first thought that came to the crew wasn't excitement, but confusion, mixed with fear, because their sensors didn't pick it up, NASA's ground systems didn't predict it, and the radar alarms stayed silent, as though the thing wasn't even supposed to exist, and yet there it was, gliding past the very edge of the ISS, like a whale emerging from a bottomless ocean, with no sound, no explanation, no record in any database. And what made the scene more chilling was how close it came. Close enough that the astronauts could see strange lights flickering along its surface, like patterns or symbols glowing faintly in the shadows, as if the object was alive or carrying some kind of hidden intelligence. And as the crew tried to film it, their cameras flickered, static ran across their screens. And one of the astronauts swore that for a brief second, his helmet comms caught an unexplainable hum, a vibration not from the ISS, not from the systems, but from the object itself, as if it was trying to speak, trying to announce its presence, in a language humans weren't built to understand. And the suspense thickened with every passing moment because the ground team at NASA, watching the live feed, realized that they too had no explanation. No asteroid matched its trajectory, no debris matched its shape, and the sheer size of it was staggering. Larger than anything that should have been drifting this close to Earth, but instead of tumbling like junk, it moved with precision, a controlled, slow maneuver that suggested purpose. And suddenly, questions exploded in everyone's minds. Was it a secret satellite? Was it some lost spacecraft from a forgotten mission? Or was it something much more mysterious, something not built by human hands at all? And while the astronauts held their breath, staring at it through the station's observation window, a feeling grew inside them, not just of being watched, but of being studied, as if this unknown object had crossed paths with the ISS not by accident, but by choice. And the longer it lingered, the more eerie it became, because the stars behind it seemed to bend, light warping in ways that made no sense, like it was wrapped in a strange field of its own. And in that silence, broken only by the hum of ISS systems, the greatest question of all took root. Had humanity just witnessed its first close encounter with something truly extraterrestrial? And if so, why did it come so close? Why now? And what secret was hidden inside that vast, unknowable shadow drifting past the world's most advanced human outpost in space, leaving behind nothing but mystery, silence, and the chilling certainty that this was only the beginning of something far larger than anyone could imagine? Imagine what it must have felt like inside that silent, orbiting fortress as the shadow of the unknown object finally slipped beyond direct view, leaving behind not just a blank patch of stars, but an emptiness that felt alive, as if the void itself had been altered by its presence. And though the crew tried to resume their tasks, not one of them could shake the overwhelming sense that they had just brushed against something far greater than their own existence. Something that did not belong to Earth, nor to human invention, nor to the familiar rhythm of space they had studied for decades, because the longer they reflected, the more unsettling details began to surface in their memories. The faint hum in their ears that had no physical source, the distortion in their cameras that almost formed shapes too quick to comprehend, the strange bending of light that rippled across the stars like waves on an invisible ocean. And it was then that one of the astronauts whispered into the comms, "What if it's still here?" A suggestion that froze the cabin in silence, for none of them could deny the possibility that the object hadn't actually left, but merely slipped into a place their instruments could not see, a dimension curled just beyond their perception, a layer of reality so close yet unreachable. And as mission control back on Earth scrambled to analyze data, they too found anomalies. Gaps in telemetry, seconds missing from the live transmission. Electromagnetic interference recorded not only on the ISS, but on satellites orbiting far below, as if the entire Earth had briefly been brushed by an invisible current, a passing storm in the fabric of space itself. And whispers began to spread among the scientists monitoring the situation. Whispers that spoke of impossible theories, objects that phase in and out of detectable space, craft that bend light and gravity to mask themselves, or entities that are not mechanical at all, but living, immense forms traversing the cosmos in ways our species
has no language to describe. And still the most terrifying thought was not that the object was alien, but that it had chosen to come so close, within mere kilometers of the ISS, as though it wanted to be seen, as though it was studying the fragile outpost of humanity orbiting a blue planet, glowing far below. And the astronauts, still trying to process the enormity of what they had witnessed, felt increasingly uneasy as tiny things began to happen inside the station, panels flickering for no reason, tools drifting oddly against the expected currents of airflow, digital displays momentarily showing characters no one could recognize, strings of symbols that did not belong to any known programming language. And one of the astronauts swore that while he slept, he dreamed of landscapes not his own, visions of endless black oceans beneath alien skies. And when he awoke, his hands were shaking, because the dream had felt more real than waking life, as though something had reached across the barrier of consciousness and planted an image inside him. And when he reluctantly told his crewmates, two of them admitted they too had dreamed, different images, but all with the same sense of foreignness, of places that no human had ever walked. And the more they spoke, the more it seemed that the object had not left them at all, but had imprinted itself within their very minds, a silent message waiting to unfold. And down on Earth, the officials who reviewed the footage realized with mounting dread that the visual distortion in the live feed was not random static, but patterns, repeating sequences of light and shadow that mirrored the strange symbols glimpsed inside the ISS. And when mathematicians began to analyze it, they discovered ratios and alignments eerily close to constants of the universe. Pi, golden spirals, harmonic intervals, as if the interference itself was structured communication, as if the object had been trying to speak to the entire species through the thin veil of static. And suddenly the question was no longer whether the unknown object was real, but whether humanity was ready to understand what it was saying. For if this was contact, it was nothing like the dramatic signals or clear greetings imagined in science fiction. It was subtle, unsettling, and invasive, reaching not through words, but through distortion, through dreams, through the very fabric of human perception. And as the astronauts gazed out once more at the endless dark sea of space, they knew with a certainty that chilled them to the core that this encounter was not finished. It had only just begun, and that whatever intelligence lay behind the silent, drifting shadow had now touched Earth through them, through their minds, and was perhaps even now watching to see how humanity would respond, to see whether the species on the blue planet was worthy of what was coming next.